If you grew up on the water in the 1970s, you remember the one boat where everything matched. The hull, the motor, the trailer behind the family car, all of it wearing the same colors, all of it from one company that promised it would just work. Your father backed it down the ramp on a Saturday morning, and it did exactly what they said it would. And the name on the side of it was a name you already trusted because it was bolted to the front of the car that brought you there: Chrysler. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Here's the thing nobody tells you about that boat: it didn't fall apart, it didn't lose, it wasn't beaten by a better company or a smarter rival. It was sold off, piece by piece, while it was still healthy, still selling, still making money, because 1,000 miles away in Detroit, somebody decided it had to die so something else could live. And the people who actually built it never saw it coming. This is the full story, not the corporate version, the human one. It started with engines, long before it ever started with boats. For decades, if you owned a wooden runabout or a cabin cruiser, there was a good chance the heart of it came from Chrysler. They built the motors other famous boat builders trusted, the ones that turned over season after season and brought families home when the weather turned. They were so good at it that in time, their engines were better than most of the boats people were dropping them into. And somewhere in that quiet success, a bigger idea started to take shape, because here was the problem with boating back then, the thing that kept the regular man on the dock instead of out on the water. You bought your boat from one company, your motor from another, your trailer from a third, and then you prayed it all worked together. You wondered if your engine was too strong for your hull. You wondered if your trailer could even carry the load. It was complicated and expensive, and it kept a lot of ordinary families standing on shore, watching other people leave the harbor. So, in the mid-1960s, Chrysler did something that sounds obvious now and was close to revolutionary then. They bought a boat company and an outboard company, and they put the whole thing together under one roof. One boat, one motor, one trailer. All designed to fit, all painted to match, all carrying one warranty and one name you already knew from the driveway. You did not have to be a mechanic or a rich man anymore. You just had to want it. Drive to the lake and go. And America went. The boats came named after the cars people already loved. The Fury, the Charger, the Satellite, some of them wearing the same steering wheels and the same seats as the Dodge in the garage. A man could park his car at the ramp and back down a boat that matched it right to the paint. For a working family, that was not just a boat. It was a feeling that you had arrived, that the good life everybody talked about had finally made room for you too. Think about what that meant to a man who had spent his whole life being told the water was not for people like him. He had grown up watching the nice boats leave the dock without him, belonging to other people, the kind with money he was never going to have. And now there was one in his own driveway, with his own name on the title and a motor that started every single time. He could load up his kids on a Saturday and take them somewhere that used to be off limits to his entire family. That was not fiberglass. That was a door opening that had been locked his whole life. The boats were built to keep that feeling safe. They poured foam into the spaces between the decks and the hulls so the things would float even when they shouldn't, years before anyone made them do it. The hulls were shaped to ride up on top of the rough water instead of fighting through it, so the ride stayed dry and steady when the lake turned mean and the kids got scared. That was the part the spec sheets never captured. You weren't buying horsepower. You were buying the afternoon. The cooler packed in the morning, the kids asleep on the way back in, the sun going down behind a boat you trusted with the only people who mattered. It was the boat a kid caught his first real fish from, hands shaking on the rod, his father's voice telling him to keep the tip up, easy now, "You've got him." Years later, that man wouldn't be able to tell you the length of the hull or the size of the motor. He'd remember the fish and the hand on his shoulder and the boat that held them both steady while it happened. They built sailboats too, drawn by one of the great names in American sailing. Boats meant for the weekend sailor who wanted something honest under him without a yacht club price. And out on the racing circuit, they ran a monster of a hydroplane with two enormous engines that roared across the water and made every kid on the bank point and dream. That was the whole spell of the thing. You could buy a little fishing rig for the lake or chase the same badge all the way up to something that flew. It was one company that had a place for everyone, from the boy with a cane pole to the man chasing a trophy. For a stretch of years in there, it felt unstoppable. The factories ran flat out. The dealers couldn't keep the boats on the floor. Out on the lakes of America, that matching rig became one of the most ordinary, beautiful sights of a summer weekend, and the people who built them in Wisconsin and Texas went home proud because they knew that strangers were carrying their own children out past the buoys on something they had made with their hands. That kind of work does something to a person that a paycheck never could. A man could drive past a lake on a Sunday, see a boat he'd helped build crossing the water with the family aboard, and know that he was part of their best day without any of them ever knowing his name. They thought it would last forever. Why wouldn't it? Everything was working. And then the world turned, but not on the boats. It turned on the cars. By the end of the 1970s, the car company that everyone trusted was dying. Not the boat division, the car division. Detroit was bleeding money it could not stop, losing to better, cheaper cars coming in from overseas, sliding toward a collapse that would have put a small army of American families out of work. So the company did the only thing it had left. It went to Washington and asked the government to save it. The government said yes, with one condition that landed like a blade: sell off everything that was not cars. Focus, no exceptions. It did not matter that the boat division was healthy. It did not matter that it was profitable, that the dealers loved it, that the engines had a better name than the cars ever did. None of that counted for anything in that room. The Marine division had done everything right, and it was going to be sold off anyway. Not because it had failed, but because it was worth something, and the company needed the money and the focus to save the part that had failed. The healthy child was handed over to pay for the sick one, and the men in Wisconsin and Texas who had built it into something great found out their life's work was being broken up to settle somebody else's debt. It didn't end in one terrible morning. It ended slowly, which is somehow worse. First, the boats went, sold to a group that tried to keep the dream alive and could not, crushed by an economy where nobody could afford a boat anymore until the designs got scattered to other companies like furniture from a house being emptied. The plant in Texas went dark. Think of the men there who had shaped those hulls by hand, who knew the smell of the resin and the feel of a fair curve, showing up one morning to find the work was simply gone, sold out from under them to settle a debt they had no part in making. They had not built a single bad boat. It did not save a single job. Then a few years later, another piece was sold off. Then the heart of it, the outboard motors, the engines that had built the whole name, were sold too, and the new owners took the badge off the cowling and renamed the motors entirely, leaving the Chrysler name behind, a name that, after everything the car company had been through, no longer carried the shine on the water that it once had. But the cruelest part came last, and it happened to the people, not the products. The workers at the engine plant up in Wisconsin had been fighting for what they were owed, and they took it all the way, and they won. The decision came back in their favor, and the new corporate owner answered that victory by closing the plant anyway, exactly as they'd threatened, and moving the work somewhere cheaper. Picture that for a second. You win. you're finally told you were right all along. And the answer to being right is the lights going off for good, the doors chained, the line you'd worked for half your life gone silent. A town that had built motors since before some of those men were born simply stopped. They won the fight and lost everything that mattered. And here is what survives, because something always does. The idea Chrysler dreamed up, the boat and the motor and the trailer sold together as one thing ready to use, did not die at all. It became the way nearly every boat in America is sold today. Every family that drives off a lot with a matching rig and never thinks twice about it is living inside an idea that a vanished company gave the world and got no credit for. The company is gone. Its gift is everywhere, and the boats themselves refuse to disappear. Right now, on lakes all over this country, there are men running those old motors 50 years on, keeping them alive because they are simple and honest, and they start when you pull the rope, the way the good ones always did. There are people who hunt down the old hulls, who trade the parts, who bring the faded ones back to life and show them off like the treasures they are, because they remember. They remember the matching trailer in the driveway, the engine that always turned over, the father who said, "Get in, we are going," on a Saturday morning that you would give anything to have back. Some of them are restoring the exact boat they grew up in. Some are looking for one just like their dad's, chasing a feeling more than a hull, trying to hand their own kids a piece of something they were almost too young to understand was already disappearing. That boat never let your family down. It did everything it ever promised. The people who built it did everything right, and they lost it anyway, not to a better boat, but to a decision made by men who never set foot on the water. But the thing they built outlived all of it. It is still out there this summer, paint faded, motor ticking over, carrying somebody's kids out past the buoys, keeping a promise the company that made it never got to keep. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe so the next one finds you when it's ready.